Hi everyone, in today's video I'm going to showcase the best fire team right now in Street Fighter Duel. Now fire team is all about synergy with each other, and a lot of time that involves flame damage or burn debuff. And that's kind of why even though you see a lot of different fire faction characters here, there are actually only 4 characters who are able to inflict flame damage or burn debuffs. And those are kind of going to be the main core of your team. And those 4 characters are Delsin, your Sea Viper, your Fei Long, and also your Maya Cody. I'm gonna talk them in the order of importance, I guess, and that's why, no surprise, I'm gonna start off with Delsin. Now, Delsin is the absolute superstar in any kind of fire team, because fire teams, like I said, involves a lot of flame damage, and also a lot of time you are trying to do AoE and wipe out the entire enemy line at once. And Delsin Super and Combo 3 just basically does that. It deals ridiculous amounts of AoE damage, and also on top of that have the potential to burn, which is absolutely crazy. You would really see, I think, like purely in terms of damage wise, I think, you know, Delsin is probably one of the heaviest hitting character in the game right now. So Delsin is absolutely essential. He's going to be the main DPS. And then you have the next character who I also think is very crucial in any kind of fire teams, and that's going to be Fei Long. Fei Long is really important for mainly his passive, which is basically if you have a chain of fire combos, every single fire combo is going to give you an extra buff of 15%. So if you actually think about that, what that means is that if you have a combo chain of 4 attacks, your second attack is gonna be increased with a 15% buff. Your third attack is going to be increased by a 30% buff, and your last attack is going to be increased by a 45% buff. I just talked about how crazy is Delsin Combo 3. Now imagine Fei Long's passive giving that an extra 45% buff on top of that as well. That's just absolutely crazy, and that's why Fei Long is absolutely mandatory if you have a pure fire formation. The other really nice thing about Fei Long is also his skill 1 or combo 1, which also inflicts flame vulnerability. And flame vulnerability increases the fire damage taken by 10% as well. So there's that potential to even further enhance how much flame damage your team can deal. Then the next character who I think is really important is going to be Maya Cody. Now the reason why Maya Cody is really important is out of the 4 characters I just mentioned, Delsin, Fei Long, Sea Viper and Maya Cody, there isn't actually a tank, and you definitely need a tank to protect you up front. That's because your burn debuff deals damage over time, so the longer you hold out in the battle, the more damage you're going to deal, right? So you definitely need a bulky character up front. And even though Maya Cody is only a balanced fighter, he totally behaves like a tank because of his dueling passive. What basically his passive does is that he will enter a duel with one character, and that is the character which is the frontmost non-summon enemy. And most of the time, that's going to be the enemy's tank. Now, you're just going to go into duel, and what the major benefit of this is that Maya Cody is going to take 50% less damage from units not involved in the duel. Now, like I said, normally you'll be dueling the enemy's tank, so that basically means all of the enemy's damage dealers, they are not going to be in the duel, and therefore they will inflict 50% less damage to you. So this almost makes Maya Cody able to survive twice as long in the battle as a result, and therefore he can totally hold up front as kind of the semi-tank. And that's why Maya Cody is really useful. On top of that, he also have a combo 2, which I think is quite nice because it's also have a bit of a control effect and also deal flame damage that's AoE. So once again, it kind of goes in line with exactly what fire team is trying to do, doing AoE damage, and because you are inflicting control effect, that buys you some time for really that the burn damage over time to take place, etc. So Maya Cody is also very useful. And then last but not least, you have Sea Viper. Now, Sea Viper, if I have to swap out one character out of the 4 I mentioned, Sea Viper, unfortunately, is the character that I'm going to swap out. And I will show later on in the video about different variations of the fire team. And most of the time, Sea Viper is going to be the character that's going. So That I'll just tell you up front. But Sea Viper still have a very unique role in the fire team if you manage to bring all 4 characters in. And that's mainly to do with her combo 2. Now, first of all, let me clarify. Her combo 3 is actually really strong because you are dealing loads of high damage as well. The only thing with combo 3 that I don't like is I normally prefer Delsum's combo 3 to Sea Viper's combo 3. And as a result, it's very, very rare that I would ever need to use a skill, so that's kind of why I'm just gonna ignore it altogether. Now, combo 2 of Sea Viper is really the important one because what it does is it's able to detonate all of the burn status to convert them to flame damage instantly. If you think about, I already mentioned, burn damage deals 7% of attack per second for 15 seconds. So over time, that's a lot of damage. However, that takes time, and sometimes you may not be able to survive long enough. What the combo 2 of Sea Viper is able to do is instantly convert all of those burn into instant damage. Now, the damage is not as great. However, every stack of burn is going to raise the damage by 100%. Now, I don't know whether you can stack on top of that. So, for example, if you do 2 stacks, whether that's 400% or whether that's 300%, you know, whether I double it and then double again or just only increase by 100% each time. But nonetheless, the concept is the same. The more stacks of burn there are, the higher damage you're going to do. And because it's an instant conversion, the only time I would be using this is towards the end of the battle, where I need to convert all of the different layers of burn debuff into instant damage all at once to wipe out the whole team. So for that reason, for vast majority of the battle, you normally would not use Sea Viper skills at all. You normally will be using kind of Delson, Mayor Cody, and also Fei Long to just keep on stacking up loads of different burn debuff, and only in the very last combo chain. So let's say you normally can get through 3 combo chains before your characters die. Then normally only in the 3rd combo chain, that's when I would switch up the order and now use Sea Viper's combo 2 to detonate all of those burn I have managed to inflict over time throughout the battle. And that's kind of the reason why Sea Viper sometimes is the most replaceable character for me, because even though she has a really good combo 2, you most likely will only ever use that once at the very end of the battle, and sometimes you don't even have a chance to actually use it. So that's why a lot of time I actually opted to swap Sea Viper out for another more useful utility character. Alright, now that I talked through kind of the major characters for the Fire faction, let's actually talk about the lineup itself. So obviously I just went through 4 characters who all have kind of like burning debuffs for flame damage and therefore great synergy with each other. So by default, those are kind of the de facto 4 characters you want to use in your team. And the combo chain is normally going to look like this, which is you start off with Delson Super, then you go into Fei Long's 1, and that's going to inflict flame vulnerability. And then that's very handy because your Cody's combo 2 actually inflict flame damage, and on top of that, it also have a control effect, which is very nice. And finally, you finish it off with Delsum's combo 3. So this is going to be the combo chain you use for vast majority of the time. And as you can see, Sea Viper doesn't actually appear here at all. The only time you would want to modify this for Sea Viper is that towards the end of the battle, you may want to switch the game mode from auto to manual and manually choose Sea Viper's combo 2, because Sea Viper's combo 2 is now going to detonate all of the burn debuff and convert them into instant high damage. So that's a very good game finisher, battle finisher, closer, but you don't want to use that too early because you really want to stack up all of the burn debuffs first. So this is generally going to be the strategy for any kind of fire team, is that you keep on stacking up with your burn debuff with your first 1 or 2 combo chain, then you detonate them all at the very end of the battle with your Sea Viper's combo 2. Now, this is obviously a great game tactic if you want to use it. However, there are sometimes a few weaknesses and that may become apparent, and you really want to address them in your team as well. And that's where I will now talk about the different variation of this lineup that you may want to use. Now, the biggest 2 weakness I think in the fire team is that one, the fire team doesn't have a natural tank out of those four characters. Sometimes you find it hard for your characters to survive long enough. And because a lot of the burn damage are damage over time, you really need that survivability for all of the damage to add up over time. Then the second weakness is that these four characters are really slow. So you don't actually have anyone fast in your team. And speed is quite important in this game in terms of the first hit bonus, because there's this mechanic in every single battle. If you happen to be fast enough to land the first hit on your opponent, then you have a bonus for the remainder of that battle. So it's very important sometimes to just get that bonus, because that can change the outcome of the battle. And out of the four characters here, there's no one fast. So honestly, they're all really slow. And that basically means vast majority of the time, you would not be getting that first hit bonus. So, in order to compensate for that, sometimes you need to make variations in your lineup to kind of bring in either a tank or bring in someone fast. If you do need to make variations in this team, there's only one character you can swap out, and that is going to be Sea Viper. Because all the other three play a really important role, right? Your Delson is there for the damage, your Fei Long is there for the passive support, your Maya Code is there to hold up the line. If you already have trouble holding up your defense and you need to bring in a tank, why would you want to swap out your second Bulkist character? It just makes no sense. And if you need to bring in someone fast, then that means you can't swap out Mayor Cody either, because Mayor Cody is the only tank, semi-tank in your team. So you definitely can't swap him out. And therefore, those three are kind of always going to be glued into your team. Whereas the fourth position, Sea Viper, that is a lot more debatable, because yes, while Sea Viper do massive amount of damage in the very end to close out the whole battle, if you actually think about her usage, you won't be using her for literally 90% of this battle. Most of the time, you combo chain is always going to be Delson, Fei Long, Cody, Delson. You never ever actually use Sea Viper. Or if you use her, you will only use her once in that whole battle at the very end. So therefore, she is a much easier character for you to swap out for a different kind of utility. Okay, so now if you do need to swap her out, who do you want to swap her out with? And that really depends on what kind of problem you're having with your team right now. If your problem is that you don't have anyone fast enough to really kind of get that first hit bonus, then you want to bring a fast character, obviously. And the fastest character in the game are normally the assassins. So if you still want to keep someone in the fire faction, then you can bring in DiCapri, which is fine. Um, she, I believe, is the only fire assassin, in fact. So this is something you can do. However, if you don't have her, it doesn't really matter too much either, because you can bring someone from a different faction, and that is always gonna be needed anyway, because you need to, for the maximum formation bonus, you need to use four fighters from the same faction, i.e., fire, but you need to use two from a different faction anyway. So a lot of time you'll find actually in the electricity faction there isn't actually an assassin. Whereas in the Wind faction, there are actually two assassins. There's Trini and there's also Kemi. So you just bring one of them in, and you basically have a really speedy character in your team for the first hit bonus. And you don't really need to worry about which character you bring in, whether it's DiCapri, Kemi, or Trini, because in all of the cases, you combo chains are gonna be the same. You would never actually use any of the skill of the fourth character. So whichever assassin you bring makes literally zero difference to the outcome of the battle. So that's why it doesn't really matter whether you keep it to the fire faction or actually switch out to a different faction. Okay, so this is basically your choices if you need to bring someone fast into your team. Now, if it's the second problem you're having, which is your team dies too quickly and you need someone to help your survivability, and you need to bring in a tank, then once again, in the fire faction, you can bring in Hugo, and you can also bring in DJ, who I don't actually have, but also Dudley, who is also like a pseudo tank. So you can also bring one of them in, but they don't really have that synergy with kind of the flame damage or the burn damage. So you are doing a bit of a trade off there. And of course, as usual, if you don't have any of them, what you can do is try to bring help from a different faction. And Abel, I want to give a special honorable mention, is a very, very good tank who I think have a lot of synergy with the fire characters. Um, One major reason is because Abel is super versatile. Abel's super combo start is actually putting up a show for just himself. However, he also have a combo one, which is able to put up a shield for the entire team. So a lot of time, depending on whether the enemy is going for single target and only hit your front row, or actually is able to somehow do AoE or hit your back line, etc., you can then decide and switch around between whether you want to start off with Abel's combo or actually you want to put Abel's in terms of combo one to put up a shield for your whole team. So there's a lot of versatility you can do with Abel. And also the other thing to make worth noting is that in either of the scenarios, your Fei Long's passive is still going to stack to some extent. In this one, it's very obvious. You have a whole chain of 3 consecutive fire combos, so the passive is definitely going to work. However, even in this scenario, you may think in this chain right now there's only 2 consecutive fire combos, but actually, if you read Fei Long's description, it actually says the stacking buff only get interrupted when you use different faction characters combo. It doesn't actually say the buff won't be carried over between chains. So actually, you will still be able to get a chain of 3 consecutive fire combos here. Because what happens is that by the time you reach Cody's combo 2, that's already one fire character. Then you move on to Delsim's combo 3, that's the second fire character. And then in the next chain, you're going to start off with Delsim's combo super start. So that's the third fire character. So you are still able to stack up your Fei Long's passive this way. So that's still very good. And it's interesting to know that by bringing only one character from the other faction, you don't actually hinder your Fei Long's passive too much. So that's always good to know that. So yeah, so this is gonna be my recommendation for the best fire team you can build right now. Vast majority of the time, as I said, just do a quick recap. You want to bring in this team of Mayor Cody, Fei Long, and also Delson, with the fourth character being either Sea Viper if you want that damage output of detonation at the end, or you can swap her for an assassin if you want to get that first hit bonus, or swap her for a tank if you need that extra defensive support. So yeah, so this is gonna be the best fire team in Street Fighter Duel right now. Let me know your thoughts and also let me know if you have any other tips on how to make this team even better. As I mentioned in my previous videos, I will also be making some team guides for some of the other elements. So I'll probably do my guide for the wind element next and then possibly for electricity as well. I'll probably cover electricity last because that's probably the most popular and the most meta team right now. But I certainly will definitely do one covering the wind element characters just to show you what would be the best wind team you can build. Alright, so that's it for the video today. Definitely keep an eye out for my future team guide and hopefully see you next time.